You learn the truth about people when your hands are not full of gifts. Not money, not favors. That little habit of saving everyone who keeps cutting you open. The moment you stop pouring yourself into empty cups, listen carefully. Their voices change. The sweet become cold, the humble become proud. The grateful ones forget every night you carried them while your soul was breaking. And that is the comedy of it all. They did not love your heart. They loved the access. They loved the version that answered fast, the version that forgave quickly, the version that said, "It's fine," while dying behind the eyes. But the day you finally become quiet, the day you stop explaining, the day you stop begging for basic respect, they reveal themselves. Not because you became cruel, no. Because your kindness stopped feeding their hunger. Some people look innocent while you are useful. Take away the benefit, the mask begins to itch. They call you changed because they cannot call you controlled anymore. They will call you selfish because they cannot spend you anymore. They will call you cold because your warmth no longer belongs to those who froze you. And it hurts, yes, because a part of you wanted them to be better than that. Pain has eyes. And once you see who claps at your pain, who vanishes when you need them, who returns when you are useful again, you do not become bitter. You become awake. And awake people do not hand knives to smiling hands. Now you sit there differently. Not smiling the same, not trusting the same, not running toward voices just because they sound warm. Because experience teaches terrible things quietly. You start noticing who disappears when you stop entertaining them, who becomes irritated when you stop apologizing for things that were never your fault, who suddenly treats your silence like betrayal, because your silence no longer feeds their importance. And honestly, that realization can make a person cold at night. You replay conversations. You replay loyalty. You replay moments where you emptied yourself trying to save connections already dying behind your back. That is what hurts. Not losing people. Realizing how little it took for them to change once your giving stopped. Funny world, People praise sacrifice until sacrifice asks to rest. People adore kindness until kindness develops boundaries. People love loyalty until loyalty refuses humiliation. And some of them become angry when they can no longer reach the version of you that tolerated everything. That version is dead. You buried him quietly. No funeral, no dramatic goodbye. Just one exhausted night where your heart finally whispered, "Enough." After that, you started watching more than talking. Watching who only texts when they need comfort. Watching who ignores your pain but memorizes your usefulness. Watching who suddenly becomes distant the moment you stop carrying conversations alone. Patterns expose people faster than words ever will. And the terrifying part? Most people reveal themselves casually, without shame, without realizing you are finally awake enough to see it. So do not beg for old energy. Do not chase explanations. Do not force loyalty out of empty souls. If someone only values your giving, then they never truly valued you. And once you understand that, you stop mourning the connection. You start protecting your peace. After a while, you stop reacting the way they expect. That confuses people, especially the ones who survived by controlling emotions they never respected. They remember the old you, the one who panicked when energy changed, the one who kept chasing cold hearts hoping warmth would return. But pain, real pain, changes the nervous system of a human being. One day you wake up exhausted, not angry, not dramatic, just done. Done explaining loyalty to selfish people. Done shrinking yourself so ungrateful souls feel comfortable. Done carrying conversations that die the second you stop breathing life into them. And suddenly they notice. Funny timing, They ignored your sadness for months, but notice your distance in seconds. Because distance threatens people who benefited from your emotional availability. Some people were never attached to your soul. They were attached to your access, your attention, your forgiveness, your patience, your endless understanding. Take those away and watch how quickly affection turns into irritation. That is the real face. Not the smiling version, not the sweet voice at midnight, not the fake concern. The real face appears when they stop receiving. And yes, it breaks something inside you, because you remember how genuine your love was, how pure your intentions were, how many nights you sat there defending people who were slowly draining the life out of you. But maybe heartbreak is not always destruction. Maybe sometimes heartbreak is evidence. Evidence that your soul can no longer survive in fake environments. A healthy heart eventually rejects poison. So let them misunderstand your silence. Let them gossip about your change. Let them paint you cold because you stopped burning yourself to keep everybody warm. You are not becoming cruel. You are becoming unavailable to disrespect. And trust me, people reveal everything once your giving disappears. And the more unavailable you become, the louder their truth gets. Not in words, no, in behavior. They start testing doors you already locked. They send small messages, small jokes, small memories. Just enough to see if the old you is still alive. But the old you, the one who answered with a shaking heart, the one who forgave before the wound even closed, is not coming back. And that scares them, because now your kindness has conditions, your patience has limits, your silence has meaning, your presence has value. They loved you better when you were confused, when you questioned yourself, when you felt guilty for saying no, when you treated their bare minimum like a miracle. But once your eyes opened, everything changed. You stopped calling disrespect a misunderstanding. You stopped calling manipulation a mistake. You stopped calling absence a busy schedule. You named things correctly. And naming the truth is dangerous, because lies survive only when you keep decorating them. So now let them be uncomfortable. Let them face the version of you that no longer negotiates with pain. Yes, it hurts. It hurts to accept that some people only became honest after they lost control. But pain with truth is better than peace built on blindness. Listen, when someone shows you they only respect your absence, believe them. Do not run back because they suddenly sound sorry. Sometimes sorry means nothing but, I miss what you used to give me. And you are not a shelter for people who burned their own home inside you. So stay quiet, stay firm, stay gone from what drains you. Because once people reveal themselves, your job is not revenge. Your job is remembrance. Remembrance changes a person. Not loudly, not all at once, slowly, like winter entering a house through cracks nobody noticed before. You begin remembering every moment you abandoned yourself trying to keep somebody else comfortable. Every forced smile, every apology you gave just to stop conflict. Every night you sat there staring at the ceiling, asking yourself why love felt so heavy. And eventually, your mind becomes tired of lying to your heart. That is when healing starts becoming dangerous to people who benefited from your weakness. Because a healed person asks questions. A healed person notices patterns. A healed person stops romanticizing disrespect. You stop calling emotional neglect space. You stop calling manipulation confusion. You stop calling repeated betrayal human imperfection. No, you finally call it what it was. Disrespect with excuses attached to it. And some people hate awareness more than hatred itself, because awareness destroys access. Once you see clearly, they cannot pull you back using guilt. They cannot control you with silence. They cannot shake your nervous system every time their energy changes. Before, one cold reply ruined your whole night. Now you look at disrespect and feel tired instead of desperate. That is growth nobody talks about. Not becoming heartless, becoming harder to emotionally manipulate. Still, there are nights where memories attack quietly. You remember how deeply you cared, how honest your intentions were, how badly you wanted certain people to prove your fears wrong. And maybe that is the cruelest part. You wanted loyalty from people addicted to receiving. Some people never ask if you are okay because your suffering was convenient for them. Your loneliness made you easier to control. Your low self-worth made you easier to keep. Your constant forgiveness made consequences disappear. So the moment you begin choosing yourself, they act shocked. Oh wow, you changed. Of course you changed. Pain changes people. Disappointment changes people. Being emotionally exhausted for too long changes people. Especially when you finally realize nobody was coming to save you from what they kept doing to you. That realization creates a different kind of human being. Quieter, sharper, harder to impress, harder to fool. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop begging to be chosen. You stop over-explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding it. And strangely, peace begins there. Not in revenge, not in anger, not in becoming cruel. Peace begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. Because the truth is, people really do reveal themselves when your giving disappears. And once you see it clearly, you can never unsee it again. And after that, something inside you becomes permanently alert. Not paranoid, just aware. Aware of tone changes, aware of delayed respect, aware of people who only become affectionate when they feel you slipping away. You begin noticing how some souls only chase what no longer chases them back. And honestly, that realization can make a human being feel very alone. Because you start understanding how rare sincerity really is. Rare. Terrifyingly rare. People promise forever with temporary hearts. People say, "I care," while calculating convenience. People hold your hand while secretly preparing distance. And the frightening part? Most of them do not even think they are evil. No, they simply prioritize themselves so naturally that your pain becomes background noise. That is why your absence suddenly affects them more than your suffering ever did. Read that again inside your chest. Your absence affected them more than your pain. You cried quietly. They slept peacefully. You overthought every cold reply. They continued their day normally. You sat there blaming yourself while they enjoyed the emotional safety your loyalty provided. But the moment you emotionally detached, now they feel abandoned. Funny world. They call it abandonment when you stop sacrificing yourself. And maybe that is why exhausted people become silent. Not because they have nothing to say, but because experience taught them words rarely change selfish hearts. A person who truly values you does not wait until your soul is numb to appreciate your presence. That lesson hurts, because part of you still remembers the beginning, the laughter, the warmth, the hope, the late-night conversations that felt real. You replay them sometimes, not because you want to go back, but because your heart struggles to accept how something beautiful became emotionally dangerous. And slowly, very slowly, you stop romanticizing potential. You stop loving people for who they could be. You start respecting what they consistently are. That changes everything, because consistency exposes character faster than promises ever will. A manipulative person can fake sweetness for weeks, maybe months, but patterns eventually confess. Who only calls when lonely, who disappears when you need support, who returns when their ego feels ignored, who acts offended the second you stop overgiving. Patterns speak louder than emotional speeches. That is why awakened people become difficult to control. They stop listening only to words. They start studying behavior. And once you reach that stage, you become dangerous to fake connections, because now you notice everything. The forced concern, the calculated apologies, the affection that appears only when access is threatened. Ah, yes, human behavior becomes very obvious after heartbreak destroys your innocence. Still, do not let disappointment turn your heart cruel. Let it turn your vision clear. there is a difference. You do not need revenge against people who revealed themselves. Life already punished them. Imagine living unable to love without selfishness, unable to stay without benefit, unable to value people beyond usefulness. That is emptiness pretending to be power. Meanwhile, you survived emotional wars that nearly broke your identity. You learned how to walk away from attachment even when your chest begged you to stay. Do you understand how painful that is? To love deeply and still choose distance because peace matters more than addiction. Most people never develop that strength. They return to what destroys them just to avoid loneliness. But you finally understood something life was trying to teach you through every disappointment. Not everyone deserves access to your heart. Not everyone deserves your softness. Not everyone deserves endless understanding. Not everyone deserves another chance after repeatedly damaging your spirit. Your transformation did not begin when you became stronger. It began the moment you became tired. Tired of carrying conversations alone. Tired of forgiving things that secretly destroyed your self-respect. Tired of pretending loyalty does not hurt when it is given to the wrong people. Exhaustion changes human beings more than motivation ever will. Because eventually, the soul reaches a point where survival becomes more important than attachment. That is when your eyes truly open. You stop confusing attention with care. You stop confusing chemistry with trust. You stop confusing someone's temporary emotions with genuine loyalty. And suddenly, the world looks different. You start hearing manipulation hidden inside sweetness. You start noticing disrespect hidden inside jokes. You start seeing how some people slowly test your boundaries to discover how much pain you are willing to tolerate. And if you tolerate enough, they lose respect for you quietly. That is the cruel truth nobody explains. Overgiving does not always create love. Sometimes it creates entitlement. People become comfortable receiving what they never earned: your time, your patience, your emotional labor, your forgiveness after repeated damage. Then one day, the supply disappears. And suddenly they act confused. What happened to you? Nothing happened. You simply became aware that constantly saving others was slowly destroying you. Awareness is painful, because awareness forces you to admit things your heart tried to deny for a very long time. Like realizing some people only loved the parts of you that benefited them. Like realizing your kindness became a tool they expected instead of appreciated. Like realizing your silence was more respected than your honesty ever was. That realization changes your nervous system. You stop responding instantly. You stop over-explaining. You stop trying to fix every emotional distance the second it appears. Not because you stopped caring. Because you finally understand relationships cannot survive from one person's effort alone. And honestly, that lesson can feel heartbreaking at first. Especially when you are the type of person who loved deeply. The type who remembered small details. The type who stayed during dark moments. The type who gave people understanding even while secretly falling apart yourself. People like that suffer differently. Because they do not just lose connections, they lose illusions. The illusion that loyalty automatically creates loyalty. The illusion that love guarantees respect. The illusion that your pure intentions protect you from selfish people. Life destroys those illusions eventually. Not to make you heartless, but to make you wiser. A wise person no longer begs to be valued. A wise person observes, listens, steps back, studies actions instead of promises. And once you begin doing that, human behavior becomes terrifyingly clear. You notice who only appears when lonely, who disappears after receiving comfort, who acts distant once your usefulness fades, who suddenly panics the moment your attention is no longer guaranteed. It almost feels insulting afterward, like, was that all I was to you? A source? A temporary emotional shelter? A convenient heart to visit whenever life became difficult? Maybe. And maybe accepting that truth is part of becoming emotionally free. Because freedom begins when you stop begging people to become who they already showed you they are. That is real maturity. Not blindly trusting everyone, not blindly hating everyone, simply seeing clearly and choosing peace anyway. Choosing peace sounds beautiful in theory. But in reality, peace is painful at first. Because peace often requires separation from people your heart became emotionally addicted to. And addiction, emotional addiction, can disguise itself as love for a very long time. You keep returning, keep forgiving, keep hoping, not because you are stupid, because your heart remembers the good moments louder than the harmful ones. That is why emotionally exhausted people suffer silently. Half of them knows the truth. The other half keeps begging for the illusion to come back. And illusions are dangerous. They make you romanticize inconsistency. They make you tolerate disrespect because they were good to you once. They make you ignore patterns because your emotions are attached to memories. Human beings can become prisoners of who somebody used to be. That is terrifying. Because while you are busy remembering their potential, they are busy repeating the same behavior, destroying your peace. And every time you forgive without boundaries, you quietly teach people how to treat you. That sentence alone changes lives. People study tolerance. They observe what hurts you, then notice whether consequences exist. If none appear, respect slowly dies. Not always intentionally. Sometimes human nature simply becomes comfortable where accountability is absent. That is why some of the kindest souls eventually become cold. Not because they enjoy hurting people, not because they lost humanity, because constant disappointment forced their nervous system into survival mode. After enough betrayal, the body itself becomes tired. Tired of anxiety, tired of emotional guessing, tired of wondering whether affection is real or temporary. So eventually, you stop chasing certainty from unstable people. You stop asking for reassurance from inconsistent hearts. You stop expecting maturity from emotionally selfish minds. And strangely, that is when your dignity returns. Not loudly, quietly. Like breathing fresh air after years inside a suffocating room. You begin sleeping differently, thinking differently, protecting your energy differently. You realize not every connection deserves unlimited access to your emotions. Some people should only meet small pieces of you. Some should remain memories. Some should never return after they reveal their intentions clearly. Because second chances mean nothing when behavior stays the same. People love saying, "Nobody is perfect." True. But there is a difference between imperfection and repeated disrespect. One is human weakness. The other is a decision. And once you emotionally understand that, your standards begin changing. You stop admiring words. You start admiring consistency, effort, presence, calm honesty. No more emotional performances. No more dramatic apologies without change. No more confusing intensity with sincerity. Because real care feels stable, not confusing, not manipulative, not emotionally exhausting every week. Some people enter your life only to teach you what your soul should never tolerate again. And maybe that was their purpose all along. Not to stay, but to wake you up. So now, when someone reveals themselves, believe the behavior, not the memory, not the potential, not the lonely part of your heart begging to reopen old wounds. Believe the pattern, because patterns rarely lie. And protecting your peace is not cruelty. It is survival. Survival changes the way you love. Not the depth, the access. You stop giving people unlimited emotional entry before they prove their intentions. You stop exposing your wounds to hands that enjoy touching pain without healing it. And yes, some people become uncomfortable when they can no longer read you easily. Because mystery frustrates people who once had emotional control over you. Before, they knew exactly how to reach you. One cold reply, one delayed message, one moment of distance, and your entire mind would collapse into overthinking. Now you notice the behavior and remain calm. That calmness terrifies manipulative people because they survive through emotional reactions. Think about it. A person who controls your emotions controls your peace, controls your focus, controls your sleep, controls the atmosphere inside your chest. That is power. And many people become addicted to having it over others. Especially over kind people. Because kind people explain too much, forgive too quickly, empathize even while bleeding. Predatory personalities notice that instantly. Maybe not consciously, maybe not with evil laughter in dark rooms. No. Human nature simply moves toward what is easiest to access. And if your boundaries are weak, people eventually test how far they can go. That is why self-respect matters more than attachment, because attachment without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Some people are not evil, just emotionally undisciplined. They chase attention when lonely, disappear when comfortable, return when ignored, panic when replaced, promise change during moments of fear, then repeat the same behavior once safety returns. Cycles. That is what destroys exhausted hearts. Not one mistake, repeated cycles. Repeated disappointment, repeated confusion, repeated moments where your intuition whispered the truth, but your loneliness begged you to stay. And eventually, your soul becomes tired of negotiating with pain. That is the exact moment your standards evolve. You stop asking, do they like me? You start asking, do they bring peace into my life? That question changes everything, because attraction can lie, chemistry can lie, words can lie, but peace? Peace rarely lies. A healthy connection does not constantly leave your nervous system exhausted. A healthy connection does not force you to decode basic respect. A healthy connection does not punish you every time you express emotional needs. Imagine begging for clarity from somebody creating confusion on purpose. That kind of emotional prison destroys people slowly. And the scary part? Many become so used to emotional chaos, peace starts feeling unfamiliar. They mistake anxiety for passion, uncertainty for excitement, emotional inconsistency for depth. But maturity teaches something different. Real love does not constantly threaten your emotional stability. Real care does not disappear whenever convenience changes. And real loyalty does not need endless chances to become respectful. That is why awakened people become selective, not arrogant, not cold, selective. Because once your heart survives enough disappointment, you finally understand the price of access. Some people cost your confidence, some cost your peace, some cost your identity, some cost years of emotional exhaustion. And no connection is worth abandoning yourself completely. So now you move differently, quieter, slower, more observant. You stop forcing connections, stop chasing closure, stop trying to convince emotionally unavailable people to value what they already took for granted. Because deep down, you finally accepted something painful. Not everyone who smiles at you deserves a seat inside your heart. And that acceptance saved your life. There is another kind of pain nobody prepares you for. The pain of realizing you were loved correctly, only when you were useful. That realization does something terrible to the mind. It makes you question memories, question loyalty, question whether certain smiles were ever real at all. And honestly, sometimes the hardest betrayal is not being hated. It is being appreciated only for what you provided. Your comfort, your attention, your emotional availability, your ability to absorb pain quietly while everyone else stayed selfish. Some people become attached to your tolerance more than your personality. That is why boundaries shock them, because boundaries expose intentions. The moment you say, "No more," watch carefully. The respectful ones adjust. The selfish ones become offended. Isn't that strange? People can watch you suffer silently for months, yet the second you protect yourself, suddenly you are difficult. That word alone reveals so much. Difficult. No, you simply stopped making access easy. And humans often confuse unavailable with arrogant because they are frustrated they can no longer reach you the same way. Especially people who benefited from your emotional weakness. People who knew you would stay after disrespect. People who knew guilt could pull you back. People who trusted your fear of loneliness more than your self-respect. Those people never expect transformation. They expect endless forgiveness. That is why your silence becomes louder than arguments ever were. Because silence means something terrifying. You finally detached emotionally. Not fully healed, not fully over the pain, but detached enough to stop begging. And begging is what keeps many souls trapped. Begging for closure, begging for reassurance, begging for consistency from inconsistent people. Meanwhile, the other person relaxes comfortably, knowing your heart keeps reopening the door. Until one day, the door stays closed. That moment changes everything, because now they feel your absence instead of your availability. Now they experience distance instead of guaranteed access. Now they realize your energy was never ordinary. Too late. And maybe that hurts you too. Maybe part of you still wanted things to become genuine, still hoped effort would finally be returned equally, still imagined loyalty creating loyalty. But life keeps teaching the same brutal lesson. Love offered without boundaries becomes sacrifice, and sacrifice without reciprocity becomes slow emotional suicide. People romanticize self-destruction when the victim is kind. They call you strong for enduring what should have made you leave. They praise your patience while benefiting from your suffering. They admire your loyalty as long as it costs them nothing. That is why awareness feels lonely, because once you see clearly, you cannot return to emotional blindness. You notice manipulation faster, notice inconsistency faster, notice fake concern hidden behind convenient timing, and eventually you stop reacting emotionally to every disappointment. Not because the heart no longer feels, because the soul became tired of collapsing over predictable behavior. So now, you protect your peace quietly. No speeches, no revenge fantasies, no dramatic exits, just distance. Cold, respectful distance. And strangely, that distance teaches people more about your value than your constant presence ever did. Because humans often underestimate what feels permanent until it disappears. And by the time they finally understand your worth, you already learned the hardest lesson of all. Never let your fear of losing people become greater than your respect for yourself. Self-respect is a lonely road sometimes. Because the moment you finally develop it, you start losing connections that survived only through your self-neglect. And people rarely admit that openly. They will not say, "I miss controlling your emotions." No. They say you changed. They say you became distant, cold, hard to reach. As if destroying yourself for everyone else was somehow the healthier version of you. That is the manipulation exhausted people eventually notice. The world often rewards overgiving until the giver collapses. Then suddenly, nobody knows how to help. Nobody knows how to stay. Nobody knows how to carry you the way you carried them. And that realization can make a human being emotionally numb for a while. Because you start replaying everything differently. Every "I appreciate you," every "I'm here for you," every promise that disappeared the second your energy changed. You realize many people loved your function, not your humanity. Your function. Your ability to calm them, comfort them, understand them, forgive them, remain available no matter how damaged you became. But the second you needed the same consistency back, silence. That silence breaks something inside a loyal person. Not because attention disappeared, because effort was never equal to begin with. One person watered the connection, the other person enjoyed the garden. And eventually, the gardener became too exhausted to continue. That is what people misunderstand about emotionally drained souls. They do not leave suddenly. They leave after thousands of quiet disappointments nobody noticed. Tiny moments, tiny neglect, tiny disrespect, tiny absences during moments that mattered deeply. Those small things accumulate inside the chest until one day, the heart no longer reacts the same way. The attachment weakens, the hope weakens, the emotional dependency weakens, and strangely, peace begins entering through the same door pain once used. Not perfect peace, but enough peace to finally think clearly. Enough peace to stop romanticizing suffering. Enough peace to stop confusing emotional chaos with deep connection. Because chaos is not love. Confusion is not love. Constant anxiety is not love. Having to beg for basic emotional consistency is not love. Love should not constantly feel like survival. That lesson changes people forever, especially people who spent years tolerating emotional imbalance because they feared abandonment. But eventually, even fear becomes exhausted. And once fear loses power over you, manipulation stops working the same way. That is when some people panic, because your silence suddenly feels unfamiliar. Your distance suddenly feels permanent. Your calmness suddenly feels unreachable. They were comfortable when you reacted emotionally, comfortable when guilt controlled you, comfortable when your heart reopened every time they returned. Now they cannot predict you anymore. And unpredictability scares people who relied on your emotional availability. Still, do not become cruel because of disappointment. Do not poison your heart trying to survive what hurt it. Become wiser. Become quieter. Become selective. But never lose the part of you that loved sincerely. Because genuine hearts are rare in this world. And the goal is not to stop loving. The goal is to stop offering sacred parts of yourself to people who only visit when they need warmth. There is a difference. A painful one, but a necessary one. And once you finally understand it, you stop chasing people. You start protecting your soul.